Welcome everyone. My name is Bradley Charbonneau. I'm an author of 31 books. I am here today with David Chislett, who's the creator of Rock Your Writing. And we're going to see why somebody who has written 31 books would even think, oh, I know everything about grammar and writing and even rocking your writing. Yet, having taken the course myself and having learned so much from it, I wanted to know more about it, and David is going to tell us everything there is to know. Who's it for? Why is it there? What does it do? The how, when, why, when, where, and we're going to get back to that in a minute. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Bradley. Good to be here with you.
Great, great. Okay, so I have to start out with that how, when, see, because I'm messing it up already, and you would think, I'm a native English speaker, American, although the British might have a little issue with me being a native English speaker, but I swear I'm pretty good. And there were some elements in there where even as a native speaker, I thought, well, I don't know that. And then there were some tools in there when I thought, oh, wait a minute, I could actually use that tool, even as a native speaker, to improve my messaging, improve my communication, get my message across more clearly or efficiently or effectively. So frankly, how did you manage to do that? What is Rock Your Writing and who's it for? And how did you manage to get someone, a native speaker, to learn something and have fun doing it?
Right. Well, what it is a system, essentially, for helping people to express themselves using written English more effectively and more clearly. So most people are not actually taught how to write, either at school or at university. Sure, you're taught your ABCs, how to spell, and you're taught grammar rules, but actually composing pieces of writing is typically not taught. It's something that we kind of pick up along the way. And as a result, quite often we pick up bad habits or incorrect bits and pieces. And, you know, unless you go on to study at a higher level and need to submit big pieces of academic writing, quite often people just don't get any kind of coaching around writing. So what Rock Your Writing is an attempt to provide a low barrier to entry, quick and easy to learn system to help people to just be more effective and to get greater impact out of their writing.
So is your audience then more second language, English as a second language, or would it be, or could it be, well, the fact that I learned elements from the course would prove that anybody could learn from this. But who's the ideal audience for this?
Well, the ideal audience is anybody who's insecure in their writing, particularly in a work environment where the written word is legally binding. So you need to make pretty sure that you're making sense and that what you're saying actually means what you want it to mean. So primarily, I'm talking about people who are at work, who need to email, they need to use Slack or the intranet, or they need to communicate with proposals and reports to clients or to colleagues or to management. Of course, for a second language speaker who's probably more insecure about their ability to do that effectively, this course is great. But as you experience, there's stuff in the course that as a native speaker, no one will have ever taught you, because it's kind of, you kind of absorb it with your mother's milk almost, and no one's aware that in English there is actually a standard word order rule. I mean, you can break it, but there exists a template. And so the comment I get from a lot of native speakers is they didn't know that. And of course, second language speakers even more so.
Yeah. So I didn't know that. And as you say, as the native speaker, I just go by feeling, like, oh, that sounds right, or that feels right. But that's of little use. My experience is of little use for English as a second language. But even if your English, let's say we're here in the Netherlands, their English is in my opinion, very good, spoken English. But then the written English, for them, even though if I've got all the words, but then like what you're saying, the structure and the word order and punctuation, so all of those elements, that follows a system.
Yes.
That they can learn or learn better if maybe they know it, but they can learn better and then apply that system to improve their messaging.
Right, because spoken language, 75 to 80% of what you mean is transmitted by everything except the words you use. The context, your body language, your hand gestures, your facial expressions transmit an enormous amount of meaning. So if you're making grammar and compositional errors, it simply doesn't matter. But when you're writing, all you've got is those little scratches on the screen or on the page, and all the meaning needs to come from that.
Yeah.
So if I say to you, we have a meeting tomorrow, that's fine. We have a meeting tomorrow, great. But if I say to you, tomorrow we have a meeting, that means something different. Because English has standard word order, and we have a meeting tomorrow is in that standard order, that you just kind of go, oh, right, thank you, we got a meeting tomorrow. But if I say to you, tomorrow we have a meeting, I need to have a reason to do that. And it's those kinds of subtleties that most people just aren't aware even exist.
Well, that's interesting, because here we are speaking to each other. We're not writing to each other. And you can put the emphasis on tomorrow.
Yes.
We have a meeting. Meaning, hey, pal, you forgot the meeting was not yesterday.
Right.
It's not next Tuesday. It's tomorrow. So I can put that emphasis there. Whereas
so when you do that in writing, I don't know whether you mean it that way or something's changed. Maybe you weren't updated. I'm helping you out, and so on and so on. There's an enormous range of implied meaning which is possible because of the change. But if you stick to standard word order, it's like, there's a meeting, when is it? Tomorrow.
Yeah. There was a fantastic example in one of the lessons where there were 7 words, and you laid it all out. If you put the emphasis on word number 1, it means this. Word number 2, it means this.
Yeah.
And every single emphasis on the different 7 words had 7 different meanings.
Right.
It's a bit like, I do not speak Mandarin, but I know in Mandarin you can have ma, you can have one syllable, and the intonation and the way you pronounce it can mean 4 different things.
Right.
And so this sentence with 7 words, with the emphasis in 7 different places, meant 7 different things.
Right.
Yet, if I speak that, I can put the emphasis on a certain word.
Yes, but the issue with that is that when you write it, I don't know which of the 7 meanings you meant.
Yeah.
Which means you need to recompose the sentence to make it apparent. And there are standard tricks or approaches which will allow you to do that. The trick is to become aware of the fact that you are writing a sentence which is dependent on intonation for its meaning, instead of dependent on the actual words that make up the sentence.
Yeah. So I saw different tools in there, word order and punctuation, and using those things. And so I will, in the course, a student will gain those tools, learn those tools, and then be able to say, okay, let me see, if I said it, I would emphasize the word tomorrow. And so I'm going to learn how to write that, because I'm not sending a voicemail, I'm writing a text.
Yeah. So look, it's an 8-module program, which you can either do in 8 days, or in 1 day, or over 8 weeks. It's the whole idea behind presenting it as a digital training platform without a set timeline is to allow people to go at their own pace, so that they can really only move on to the next module once they're fully confident that you've internalized the information that is there. And the idea behind Rock Your Writing is not so much that it acts as a reference for good writing, but rather that it is a simple enough system that by completing the course, you should be able to internalize most of it, so that you're just making your life easier every time you need to use the written word as opposed to speaking.
So it's not a grammar course where, do you provide the 800-page grammar book that I need to refer to for the rest of my life? No.
No, it's not a grammar course. It's a writing course. So, of course, there is a grammar component, because part of being accurate in terms of I mean this, and therefore I'm using these words, means using grammar correctly, particularly the tenses and the different forms of the tenses, because we have different forms because they have subtly different meanings, and you need to have that under control. And you also need to make sure that your time words, like yesterday or tomorrow, match the tense. But that's as far as I go into actual hardcore grammar. The rest is what we'd probably call style or compositional skills, where it's more about your word choice and the way that you arrange them than it is pure grammar. Because otherwise you could just, sign up for any of these free grammar online courses and brush up on your grammar.
Right.
Which, is always a good thing to do. But that's not what Rock Your Writing is about.
Well, speaking of which, I'm not going to go brush up on my grammar. And I don't know if many people would, willingly voluntarily go and brush up on their grammar. It just sounds like a thing that most people wouldn't do. So why would they, let's say, I should really brush up on my grammar, but why would they come take this course?
Yeah.
What are the benefits then, as opposed to going and taking a grammar course?
Reputation is probably the biggest reason. I've recently seen a number of debates on LinkedIn where people have quoted an example of a sentence that was poorly composed and made the author look like they didn't actually understand what they were talking about. And that is the biggest risk you run with poor writing, is that people will think that you don't know, you don't have the subject matter knowledge. But maybe you've just never learned how to write properly, so you're struggling to express what you actually really do know.
Yeah.
So in a professional environment, good, tight, clear, easy to understand writing is critical, because we write now more than ever before. You've got email, you've got Slack, you've got WhatsApp, you've got all of these messaging platforms one way or another, where an enormous amount of business is taking place. I mean, LinkedIn, for example. And especially online, people click away really fast.
Yeah.
If the sentences are too long, if I've read it twice and if I've read it once and I didn't understand it, I'm going to scroll. There are serious implications for not getting your point across. So as a professional development tool, good writing is really important for anybody who's working in modern business.
Yeah. My dad, when he was a manager at a company, engineering company, right? Not a writing company. And he'd get his top candidates and he'd say, all right, guys, we're in the final rounds of interviews here. And I'd like you to go and take 5 minutes and write a paragraph. And, they're all confused. What do you mean? What do you talk? Oh, about the engineering? No. Just tell me about your day. Oh. And he would very clearly see, this person can put an idea together, explain it succinctly, using the right words in proper order, and I get the message he's trying to give.
Yeah.
And the other guy, less of a good job, he'd hire that guy. He would truly hire the guy who could write.
Which possibly is actually not fair.
Right.
Good writing skills are essentially, quite a privileged level of communication skill.
Right.
Depending on where and how you were educated, you may just not have acquired it.
Yeah.
And that's especially important in the second language environment, where somebody, if you were allow them to speak in their native French, Hungarian, Spanish, Greek, would quite possibly blow you away with their knowledge and their know-how and their ability to frame it.
Yeah.
But because they're now in a second language environment, maybe the vocabulary is a bit limited, the grammar of their native language is the filter through which they are expressing themselves in English, and it just comes out all a little bit wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a second language Dutch speaker, and I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And it happens to me all the time that people just don't quite get it.
Yeah.
And that's on me.
Or I had it where I worked, I'm also a second language Dutch speaker, and I worked for a Dutch company, and I had my fancy degree and my wonderful experience, and I go in, and if I write something, I am sure they think I'm a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Because I write like a 12-year-old. And I said, no, I promise, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I know what I'm talking about. Like, well, it's not really coming through in your writing.
Right. And you can't afford that when, especially at the particular moment in time where everything's happening digitally.
Yeah.
You're just increasing the scope for misunderstandings of a variety of levels. So that's the big why behind Rock Your Writing. It's about improving your impact and your influence so that you look more professional, and also so that you can showcase what you actually do know.
So it's efficiency and effectiveness.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about style? So if we had, we were also talking about what it's not. It's not a grammar course. Mm-hmm. What about the other extreme, like copywriting? Where would you see it? Is that on the same spectrum maybe? Would copywriting, or let's just say I'm interested in, like you say, the LinkedIn profiles. I think, shouldn't I take a copywriting course to make my copy stand out? Or
this is a system to allow you to express yourself easily, in a way that other people will understand easily. The applications of it are big.
Okay.
You know, so good marketing copy is effective because it's efficient. There aren't too many words. The message hits you right between the eyes. Copywriting will help you get there, but it's not a copywriting course.
Right.
It's also not a novel writing course.
Yeah.
But constructing better sentences allows your characters to flourish and become visible to the reader. And, you know, if you can't actually string a sentence together, well, you're never going to finish a novel either. So, you know, it's not any of those things, but it's the foundation level which will allow any of those things to become possible.
Okay, great. So that's really helpful. It's the foundation, it's core, it's a deeper level where then, sure, if I think I need to work on some copywriting, I'm going to use the tools and systems I've learned here in that copywriting, or in that novel, or in that LinkedIn profile, or in anything I'm writing to get across my message more effectively, efficiently, with some style.
Right, and the style thing is, you know, something that really kind of comes afterwards. You know, there is style, as in style guides. You need to do things a certain way. So in that aspect, rocky writing is about style. But it's also about creating a framework which you need to internalize so that you can then express your own voice and acquire your own personal style.
Yeah.
You know, when you don't know the rules of writing, you probably break them all the time. But because you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what the impact is, so the meaning gets lost. Once you know the rules, you can break the rules at will with a specific goal in mind, and therefore transmit the meaning that you wanted to. And that's kind of what we call style. So certain native English writers will mess with word order because they want to discombobulate you. They want you to experience confusion because they're going somewhere with it. Whereas a lot of second language speakers, because their language does not have a fixed word order system, will move various of the parts of the sentence around, and it just sounds wrong and therefore doesn't give the meaning that people intend.
Wow, so with some tools and systems, I can then get across my message and maybe even add some style to it when I get more advanced. You keep using the systems and tools you're offering, and then when I get really good, I can play a little bit. Once I feel that comfort level and knowledge level, I can then play with it a little bit to maybe add a little spice or a little style, or to maybe sneak in some hidden message I have at some point.
Yeah. You know, it's about creating a framework which you can rely on. You know, I've taught a lot of English, and typically in a business environment, people say to me, I don't know where to start.
Okay.
And so what rock writing does is it gives you a template. It gives you a starting point from which you can then grow. And it gives you certainty about what those starting points are. You know, so for example, to say, I speak with Bradley, or I am speaking with Bradley.
Right.
You know, those two sentences are actually fundamentally different in terms of what the meaning is. But it's a mistake that people make all the time. And, you know, when we're having a conversation, I can see the difference. It doesn't matter. But if you're sending an email and you say, I'm speaking to Bradley, I'm like, oh, great, you're in the middle of a negotiation, we can tweak things, we can close the deal. But if you say, I speak to Bradley, I'm like, oh, it's a regular occurrence. Next time, let's be prepared. It's a different conversation.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. It's so funny that even the writerly guy that I am, we're having a conversation here. We're even in person, and I can see, I can't not use my hands. We have facial expressions. And I think, wow, in writing, we have none of that.
No.
And so we have to then rely on the tools and the systems and the frameworks that we have only with words.
Yes.
And punctuation.
And less words, not more. You know, so another thing that confuses people a lot is to say something like, oh, that's very interesting, Bradley. And the use of the word very is an extra word. It's an intensifier. It's telling me something about the word that comes after it. Interesting. But what exactly am I saying? Because native speakers use that in two different ways. That's very interesting, Bradley, meaning so bored. Or it means like, wow, that's actually very interesting.
Yeah.
And so the trick here is not to use very and just say, that's riveting, that's fascinating, that's new to me, to rephrase yourself, quite possibly by losing words, to end up with an expression that is far more clear, has a far greater impact, and therefore transmits exactly what you mean, what you intended.
And so are there sort of tips and tricks and tools in there, like you just gave the example of vary?
Yeah.
Are there others in there we can learn along, and I can sort of remember, David said vary. I can replace vary. Hold on a sec.
Yeah.
And I can use that.
Yeah. So I talk about removing wordiness a lot, because when we're uncertain, we tend to pile more words into a sentence hoping to clarify, when in actual fact it just muddies the water further. So that's what the whole approach of Rock Your Writing is about doing. It's not just about word order. It's also about separating your ideas and your thoughts. One thought, one sentence, a couple of thoughts makes an idea. That's a paragraph. Separating those two things. So it's also about building the longer, better, bigger story by thinking about how you structure it and how you arrange it.
Yeah, I think the quote gets misappropriated to different people, but I thought it was Winston Churchill who said, I apologize, I didn't have enough time to write a short speech.
Yes, I do believe that is Churchill, yeah. And that's it. Haikus are the hardest things in the world to write. 7 syllables, 5 syllables, 7 syllables. Or is it the other way around? I can never remember. But trying to even get a simple observation about the weather into that construct is incredibly hard. People also say that writing short stories is far more difficult than writing novels.
Yeah.
Because it's got to just happen. And I think that's it. We get into these patterns where we use certain words over and over and over, not always in the correct way. And therefore our sentences become too long and too verbose, too many big words. And those need to come out. So in Rock Your Writing, there's a video where I explain a particular concept. There's a PDF workbook where you can download it, which has everything I said in the video, in the workbook. And there are quizzes built into the back end of the course, so you can check yourself using the quizzes. And there are tasks with model answers. So as you're going through, you're not just passively absorbing the information, I'm also giving you the opportunity to demonstrate that you've acquired it in some form or other.
And these PDFs, I can download them and print them out?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, those you get to keep.
And the videos, how long, I know you were joking about the 8 days, well, maybe it's not a joke, the 8 days or 8 weeks, or what if I want to take 8 months? Do I have as long as I need for this? Or?
Yeah, there is no time limit on the course once you've signed up and paid for it.
Okay, but also I like the idea that it's not necessarily a reference guide that I'm going to keep, I need to go back. What module was that to remember that thing? Because ideally this is going to sink in deeper. I'm going to have my frameworks that I'm going to be able to use. So I'm done with the course and I'm good to go.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, you've got
Yes.
the PDF downloads if you really need to refer back to something.
Okay. And towards the end of the course, there was an offer from you I could send in 2 pages. How does that work?
Is it 2 pages?
I don't know.
Yes. Well, yes. So, as a kind of final check round, maybe you're thinking to yourself, okay, great, lovely course, Dave, whatever. Here's something that's really important that I need to use. Maybe it's an application letter or it's a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And as part of the value add of the course, I will send back a critiqued version with actual corrections, but also notes saying why I've corrected it, what I thought didn't work, and why I've made the particular correction that I have.
And that could be a LinkedIn profile or about me page or letter to my boss.
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing too confidential, of course.
Right. My resignation.
Yes.
Yes, my last will and testament. Yes, don't send those, please. Wow. What also is the course? Here, I'm going to add a word at the end. What else is the course not?
Okay, it's not a creative writing course. Okay. It's not a grammar course. It's not a copywriting course. It's actually a technical, well, that's not even the right word. It's a course that is about the technical aspects of good writing. So it's really about just controlling the mechanisms of the written word in English.
Okay. Yeah, like we've talked about, not a novel writing, not a copywriting, but because we're learning the core, we can then go out and better write the novel and the copywriting and all that.
That's the principle I'm working on, yes.
Wow, okay. So that's nice that, I like that it's that core level that I can use at any level. I mean, even me, native speaker, author of books, I found many things that I didn't know and I thought, wow, I could really use this. Oh, and I said I was going to come back to it. The how, when, why. So there was a question and I didn't know the answer. And it's again about the word order. And I remember because it was one of the quiz questions and it was, okay, what is the order? Is it, okay, I'm saying I'm going to mess it up. What?
You've already messed it up.
I already messed it up. See, so here's native speaker, and this is word order that would be, and it's not that this is set in stone, that's the word order, and it cannot be changed ever, but this is the most, is it the most common or the most
It's referred to as standard word order, so it's the kind of
order.
like default setting that you would use.
Okay.
So where does your subject go, where does your verb go, where does your object go? They've all got a particular home in English, which isn't the case with many other languages.
Yeah.
And so it's about, first of all, figuring out what that is, and then figuring out how that can change, under what conditions, and why would you do that.
Okay. So if I calculate, are there 5 of them?
5 W's and an H, 6.
5 W's and an H. So 6 of them, and if I do the math here and I try to get that right, and it's going to take me another 3 hours. So can you give us that one? Because I'm not going to get it right. What? No.
No.
When? Why?
Who? What? Where? When?
Close.
How? Why? Yeah.
Wow. And see, I could just imagine having those 6 written down. You know, put it on a Post-it on your computer, and that if you were doubting the word order or you wanted to have proper word order, you could just always check that as a framework.
Yeah.
That's a great tool.
If you've ever written anything and when you read it back, you're just like, oh, something's not right.
Yeah.
First thing you must check is word order. It's the principal cause of a huge percentage of misunderstandings with sentences. Because what happens when you juggle word order is that you move the emphasis of the sentence around. And so it becomes difficult to understand the relationship between the different elements of the sentence. You know, how is the time related to the place? And is the why then related to the place or to the time or to the object? Yeah, and if you juggle the word order around, that becomes unclear. So if you've ever been in the situation where you've sent a very important email out to a colleague or a client at work, and they've sent you a whole bunch of questions back, they're basically telling you that your sentence construction was poor. What you meant was so unclear that they now have to ask you a whole bunch of questions so that they can figure it out.
You know, I could even see, I always like challenges and experimenting and evaluating. So I could even see playing with the tools that I learn is I write the email to the boss and I see how many questions I get back. Oh, I got 7 questions. And then I write the next email, better formulated, I work on it. Ooh, I'm down to 4. I could see this, even from a numbers perspective, how this could really work.
Companies complain a lot these days about the complete waste of time that email ping pong causes. And if you think about it, this is what happens. Emails go backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, because no one's really being taught how to write properly. So first of all, their sentences aren't clear. Second of all, the email is not complete, doesn't contain all of the information. Yeah. And third of all, it's overloaded with biases, with I know this, so you must know this. Or I know this, so the implication is that this is included, but I haven't actually said it, and so on and so on and so on. And so something like Rock Your Writing is also about actually improving your ability to communicate effectively and save you time even at work.
Wow, communicate effectively, save you time at work. I'm sure we could list the benefits of proper sentence structure and word order.
Well, number one is less stress for you, because you don't have to go, oh, am I doing this right? And actually number one fear in the world is speaking in public. Nobody likes doing that, right? But actually quite close behind that is having to write something important. Not everyone's hugely confident in their abilities to do that. So lower the stress, because now you understand how it works. The third one is time saving. it doesn't cost me that much time and energy now to put that thing together. I can do it a lot more quickly because I now have a system to rely on. I don't have to make it up new every single time. The next benefit is also time saving because the person on the other side finds it far more easy to understand what you've written, so you don't get all the questions back. And then the next benefit from that, obviously, is a better reputation. People go, wow, look at that. This guy really knows what he's talking about. Yeah. This person's got their stuff together and they can express themselves in a way. And it just makes you look really professional.
Well, I could imagine they're writing the mail to the boss and it's clear, it's concise, it's full of the right amount of information, not too little, not too much, and spend less time on it, has the proper answer, get it back. You just save yourself time, you save your boss time. That's how does that look when it's promotion time or who gets the project? Well, this guy clearly has his ideas in order. Well, then he probably has his projects in order as well, or it probably
so
just
it's using that bias about good writing to your advantage.
Yeah.
So instead of letting that bias wreck your opportunities by people thinking, oh, he actually doesn't have his stuff together, he can't even string a sentence together, how badly is he running that project? We've rather got a situation where the boss is going, wow, look at this person, they're so well organized, they express themselves clearly, their work must be in perfect order for them to be able to do this. I can trust them more than the one who can't do that.
Yeah. I just had it the other day, a colleague, an email to me full of just grammar and spelling and a word, just a total mess. I could barely understand it. And I thought, this is really hindering me from thinking of hiring this person. Because I thought, wow, if they're, they can't get a sentence out, how are we going to get the project done? Because writing has so much to do with so many aspects of you say, oh, well, I work in a medical field or I work in engineering or well, you still have, it's not really about communication.
Right.
Written communication.
And people in those highly niched, quite technical areas traditionally are bad at expressing themselves in writing because they're all in their heads, they're highly intellectual people, it's all going on upstairs, so they most certainly know what they're talking about. If they had to give you a demonstration, you'd be in no doubt as to their capacity. But this inability to put it out there gets in the way. And especially with academically trained people, because academic writing is a bit like legal writing. It seems the aim is almost to confuse people. But then when you want to communicate and help, you've got to unlearn all of those convoluted, complicated sentence constructions, those arcane word choices, words that only appear in legal textbooks because no human being has spoken them in a conversation for 300 years. You've got to get rid of all of that stuff.
I'm sensing a bonus item in your course. We could have the end-all be-all guide to confusing your boss and wasting time at work. It could be a separate handout.
Everything you learned in this course, do the opposite.
Waste more time, lose your job, and be home by 5.
Well, during the Second World War, American intelligence encouraged ordinary citizens in Germany to sabotage the war effort by being incompetent in their jobs. Asking too many questions at work, turning up habitually late, only doing things by half. Nothing that could ever be pointed out as actually being sabotage, but it effectively does sabotage the work effort. So if you look at your writing skills and they're poor and you're not communicating effectively, you're sabotaging your own work, not to mention what you're doing to the people you work for or with.
Yeah. Unless, of course, that's the point, to sabotage the company.
Yes.
Which is a whole different, that's another bonus item.
That's when you didn't get that raise.
How to sabotage yourself and your entire company in one handout. So all of this, what's the investment on this? What's this going to set me back?
I'm so glad you asked. So Rocky Writing, first of all, lives on Teachable, so you can find it on teachable.com. It's $175 for the course. That includes the tutorial videos, the quizzes, the PDF downloads, the tasks, the model answers, and of course that end of course opportunity to check in on yourself and see if you've actually learned anything by getting direct feedback from me on a piece that you've written.
Okay. And teachable.com, is there a direct URL where I can find it?
Right here on this video.
Okay, good.
I'm not going to recite it now because it's way too long for anybody to write it down, but we will show the URL, and of course it's available under this video online.
Well, thank you, David, so much for being here and letting us know about Rock Your Writing. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, my last comment is just remember that Rock Your Writing is all about putting your professionalism in the spotlight with better writing.
Thank you so much for being here.